Hey guys, this is Sykes. I'm going to be showing off a 4 plugin vocal chain that I made using all Waves plugins. Not only the 4 plugins on the vocal chain, but every plugin that I used in the mix can be gotten from Waves. I left on the old versions that I used, as you can see. Just for example, the normal Autotune I was using, the Waves Autotune I used instead. And I'm just going to break down how I did this mix. I kept it very simple. Most complicated stuff is all these special effects, but it's really not that complicated at all. Okay, to start with, let's just look at the vocals, kind of what we're working with here. Obviously, I have the song already assembled. That's step one, but that's kind of the easy part. Learning how to use FL, learning how to line up the beats, vocals on beat. Listen to the actual song. You can pull that in here as well. Like put the MP3 of the song down here and then like reference it, kind of match everything up. That's helpful at first. Or you can get yourself a copy of Pro Tools, open up the original session, and do what I did, bounce these stems. So you just have the song pretty much already assembled for you. And then it's just a matter of getting the beat on here, getting everything set up the way you want it. Everyone's going to have a different process. I have mine. But yeah, one thing I would recommend, no matter what you do, be organized. It's very helpful. As you can see, I have everything color-coded and like labeled. So these are ad-libs. This is Demon Voice. These are all the lead vocals. And then here's the beat. It's all labeled, it's all pretty, it's all nice, and it's all easy to follow. Okay, that's like all like the basic stuff. I'm not really gonna go in depth in that in this video, perhaps in the future, but for now, let's look at the mix. I'm gonna mute everything but the lead vocals. So here's the leads. I'm gonna zoom in a bit so you can see. This is like what a waveform of the vocals looks like. So you can pretty much see every time like it's kind of spikes from the straight line. Straight line means silence, so let's go to like here. Silence. Straight line just means silence. So whenever it kind of like pops up from the straight line, that's showing the shape of the waveform of the audio, which is basically just like the overall loudness and stuff. Anyways, so this is the hook of the song. I'm using For You. I don't know if you can see it, yep, in the top. Simple because I dumbed my process down a little bit to make it a bit easier to follow, easier to have the plugins, all that. Okay, first we have the raw vocal.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah.
So, you can hear him. He's not particularly like cleaned up or anything because I haven't done any mixing, but like it's just a normal vocal. I don't really hear anything in this vocal particularly that like is like glaring issue that needs to be addressed. So first, Autotune. Normally I use Antara's Autotunes, Autotune Pro. This is the settings I had on it before I swapped to Waves. But here I'm using Waves. So here's it with the Autotune on.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah. I do this for you, baby.
The song kind of has like a strong Autotune on it already. That's kind of how it was by default. So I kind of just like left it like that to kind of match. But here's the settings. The song is C minor, so C natural minor down here. Then I used the low male for this Autotune. So to match, I kind of just picked baritone. It's pretty close. I didn't really want to pick bass. But it just is kind of like, it focuses on like the lower frequencies for the vocal. So it kind of like keeps him in this range for his singing because he is pretty low in the entire song. I turned off format correction because I kind of usually have to start with it off. It can sound good on, but this song definitely kept it off. Correction on 100, this just means like how much of the vocal is going to be corrected or how many times that he goes off key it's going to be corrected pretty much. I'd say just stick with 100 for now, and then you could just mess with the speeds. That's kind of like for Autotune Pro, it'd be like the mix knob. This tracking knob is also kind of in relation to that, but it's a lot different with Antara's because Antara's has like issues sometimes with the artifacting. This just keeps control of that. It kind of like reduces instances where it would kind of like correct like a mistake in the vocal or something. It'll cause like clicks and pops if you have it too high. But that would just kind of be like the mix knob. Like 60% of it would be like, let's say I have it on 60. 60% would be the auto-tune vocal, and it would blend with 40% of the non-auto-tune vocal. I don't know if it works exactly the same for this, but it's kind of just like a matter of like, if you have this on 0, or 1, nothing's going to be corrected. If you have this on 100, everything's going to be corrected. And it's just going to go based off of these settings here, how it decides to correct them. Anyway, for the speed, I have it on 5 milliseconds. I'm assuming that that lines up perfectly with the retune speed here, assuming that this is in milliseconds. And then this humanize feature on this isn't really present on this at all. It just kind of like the human has on guitars is if he holds a note, like he sings and he holds a single note, perhaps like he's doing a bridge or something like that, it'll reduce the auto tune as he holds the note. So if he like strays or shakes, there's a little bit of vibrato, it won't be like as strongly like ripping it back to the right note. I just keep it on like a little bit depending on the song, just in case, but it usually doesn't change the sound that much. For this is just how fast it'll react to mistakes. And then this is how fast it'll transition from note to note. So if it decides that he's closer to a different note, it'll take a second longer to like transition to that, and it won't like force him to change the note as fast. But like as you can hear, this is still very strong settings. I feel like for guitars, I usually start around like 20. That's like the default. I think that's like a good place to start. That's kind of like where you can first start to hear the auto tune like easily for most songs. But sometimes I'll need more of that, sometimes less. Sometimes it's like style choices, but whatever. And then everything else I pretty much left default. If I didn't talk about it, I didn't touch it. But yeah, 11 milliseconds. That's how it sounded. Again, I hear play with guitar's auto tune instead, just to compare.
I do this for you.
Oh, somehow the harmony player I think got turned on. I don't know why it's doubling. Okay, whatever. The waves ones works, so we'll just go with that. That's so weird. Okay. So then it gets routed to the main mix, where I have dumbed my entire chain down of like 7 plugins to 4. So this is a channel strip. It has a bunch of different stuff on it, just to sell channel strips specifically. A lot of the Juice engineers used this in their mixes. Max did it too. They all kind of did. But there's a few different things that are going on in this plugin here. So first we have a low pass up to 125. It's normally like kind of like below a certain frequency range. There's not that much like valuable information being passed from the vocal. So it's like kind of unimportant stuff. It's called like plosives. So maybe when he says like a B or a harsh vowel or something that's kind of like a little more like guttural, like with more of like an impact, like a B, a P, something like that. There'll be like a little bit of a bump in that range, but it won't really like affect the sound. It's kind of just like in the bass range. So it'll kind of just conflict with like the drums of the beat and stuff. So it's good to cut it out. I feel like the SSL kind of has like a gentle one. So going up to like 120, 100, somewhere around like here, up here, higher than like, normally you might start at like 60 or 70, but for this, it's a little more gentle. So I like to go higher. And then if you have any demon voice, it definitely like helps to keep it from being overpowering to drag this up, because a demon voice is a vocal that's shifted an octave down, meaning its fundamental frequency is going to be half of the normal vocal. So the normal vocal's fundamentals are like 230 hertz, which is pretty low. Like that's close to where the bass is going to end up being. The demon voice vocal will be at 115 hertz, which is basically well within the range of like bass and kick drums and all that. So it just helps to reduce it and make it less conflicting with the other elements of the mix, like the instruments, and also just to stop it from like overpowering the rest of the vocal mix, because obviously it can mess with the compressors, all that stuff later on. So the start with the low pass. Then there's some EQs here. I'm going to go bottom up to explain. So this is 240. This is about near the fundamental. It's just a low cut. I cut 2 dBs out. Again, a lot of this stuff's just by ear. You don't want to like leave too much low end in there, but you definitely don't want to cut too much out because the vocal will be very thin. The low end, a lot of it kind of gives it like this body and this like presence through the mix. So I would be very careful about cutting there. Low mids, I cut 5 dBs. This is probably the biggest area that I cut at 520 hertz, 0.52 kilohertz. So kilohertz just means 1,000 hertz. So 0.52 of that would be 520. Did it pretty wide. Normally I have this on a bell curve for this, but since I wanted to just make sure that I was attenuating everything below that, I left it on a shelf, because this is just a low end shelf. So if you don't know, I'm going to pull up one of the other EQs at the bottom here just to show something. So a shelf is essentially just that if you boost, it boosts above, and then like this technically shouldn't be cutting below at all. They typically don't cut below at all. I think this specific EQ just kind of has like a cut naturally, but it'll boost above a certain point and then it'll kind of like fade off and then not, whatever. So basically I have a low shelf at like 240 and I'm just dipping some. So it's basically just taking all those low frequencies, dipping them a bit, but also dipping all of these low frequencies. So it's also helping to attenuate the plosives even more. Normally I do rock with it on a bell. That's also usually when I have an extra EQ like here. I usually like to just have a FabFilter Pro Q3. This is my usually go-to EQ, and then I'll like attenuate stuff here before I get to the SSL. But since I'm trying to simplify it for this particular mix, I didn't do that, so I left it off of bell. But normally I would have this on. But if you're gonna run this specific vocal chain, I just leave it on shelf mode. Okay, next back to the low mids. I cut 5.1 dB. It's kind of a lot, but the low mids can get very muddy. And as you compress later on, especially if you're compressing a lot, they're gonna kind of come back up. So it's good to kind of like cut them out, make sure they're like the mix is sounding very clear, especially like the vocals are sounding very clear. And then you can bring them back later if needed, or when you could just listen, see if the compressor brings any of them back. Because I think I had it initially cut only like 3 dB, but the compressors kind of made everything muddy again, so I had to cut more. And again, these are bell curves, which I'll do another demonstration with the EQ. I keep closing them. Sure. So a bell is shaped like this. It's kind of just like a normal distribution statistics. Otherwise, it kind of looks like a bell. You kind of see the shape there. It's got like a center, then it kind of like trails off. So it's like a peak, a rounded peak, and it has like an area of effect around that peak. So that's kind of like what a bell curve looks like for EQ. Usually just like, it's like a point curve. So that's what these are, these two. So it's centered at 520 hertz. We're cutting 5.1 dB. And then as you can see the pictures, little pictures right above my cursor, there's the skinny one and there's like a wide one. So it's just showing the width of the bell curve. So next I'm doing a 2 dB boost at 2.88K or 2800 pretty much with a 1.22 width. Is a little bit skinnier than this, but about the same. Don't really want to make any like huge cuts or boosts, especially when I'm only using this one EQ, which has pretty much like 2 bands and then like the low and high frequencies. So this is just kind of like a little bit of boost to like the brightness and overall like clarity. It just makes the vocal a little bit more bright, a little bit more clear, a little easier to hear, all that. And then finally, we're doing a high shelf. So again, same thing I showed with the low shelf, except it's boosting the highs, not cutting lows, and I'm doing a 12.7 dB boost. This is a pretty high like value for a shelf. So a lot of this frequency range is very like high end, that is very like almost like inaudible to the human ear, and it's very like low often with the vocal. So I don't know if you heard without this, but
I do this for you, baby.
the vocal's pretty dark, right? So I noticed it needed a lot of top end, so I just kept adding. This is what sounded good to me, especially after the de-esser took out some of the harshness. I think it sounded pretty good. Okay, next dynamic stuff. We have a compressor here. I have a very fast acting compressor. So you see this fast attack goes up here in top left. Look, fast attack, comp fast. I have it on. So this is a fast compressor attack. Basically, attack is how fast it starts acting. And then I have the release on 0.18, which is pretty fast as well. It's actually 0.18 milliseconds. So it's very fast release as well. It grabs on quick. Let's go quick too. Have it on a very high ratio, 8.4. Very high threshold, 2.6. This is just catching the peaks mostly. It is doing a little bit more than just catching the peaks because it'll frequently hit the compressor, but it's not hitting it a lot. Like 3 dB of compression on an 8 ratio compressor means it's barely going over the threshold. Then we have an expander. This is kind of like a noise gate in a sense. I don't have the gate function actually on. What an expander does is if a sound coming into it doesn't reach a certain threshold of volume, like a minimum threshold, it reduces the volume by like a lot. So I have the range increased by 40, which means it decreases it a lot. It decreases by, if you can see, about 20 dBs total at max. So that'll really like quiet down any like random noise that's coming through that isn't like actually loud enough to contribute and be like a vocal. But I have it pretty quiet here, just so that when he kind of like makes little breaths, like when he goes in the song, because he kind of does that, and it helps like keep the rhythm a little bit. I left those in, and then it's got a very slow release, but slow for this compressor. It's still only 4 milliseconds, which is quite fast, but slow for this. I left analog on because I've kind of been liking the more like older fashioned analog style sounds. Kind of prefer like the analog emulated plugins for the most part, at least as recently. It's kind of just like this little like buzzy white noise type thing, but I think it kind of like adds a little bit of richness sometimes, and it kind of is reminiscent of like older music, which I kind of like have been really appreciating recently. But I would recommend normally you could just turn this off if you want. It's really just like a buzzing, and it doesn't really change how this sounds at all. I've been leaving it on, and it's not really super noticeable, so you won't like miss out by having it on or off really. Okay, so let's play with that on. Just be careful with your ears. Maybe turn the volume down. It's going to be a little sharp because I don't have this de-esser on it yet.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah, I do this for you, baby.
Okay, so now we're going to turn on the de-esser. All a de-esser does is it takes high-end frequencies and kind of like controls them. Like it's like an on-the-spot compressor. Like it only compresses certain frequencies. So as you can see here, I have it set to a high shelf function. So it'll only de-ess and attenuate frequencies above 4,200. Normally, I like to spot de-ess, which is I have it in the band function and then I go find the worst sibilance and I just cut that out. But since I'm not doing as much EQ work as I normally do, the sibilance is kind of harsh in a few different ranges, so I kind of have to do the high shelf function instead. So I have it on 4200. I have it max cutting 17 decibels worth, which is a lot, but sometimes he'll have like one harsh instance of sibilance throughout the whole mix that like really need to be attenuated, and the rest of it's mostly probably going to be in like the 0 to -10 range for sibilance. I have the threshold about here. You just do it to ear. Whenever you're catching all the sibilance but still letting the vocal breathe and not be crushed, that's kind of like the happy range. Let me play it.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah, I do this for you, baby.
So that's pretty bright still, but that's kind of how I like my vocals. But I promise after the compression, they'll get a little bit darker. The distance between the high-end frequencies and low-end frequencies will kind of collapse a little bit with the dynamics collapsing. So next we have a CLI 76. It's an 1176 style compressor. I have the input on -31.2, output -21.2, release on 4.18, or release on 6.33. It's hack on 4.18. I am using a 4:1 ratio, the bluey version, no analog on it, full mix knob, no trim knob. I actually start with, let me just drag another instance. I usually start with this preset, the Frank Ocean preset, and I just shift it a little bit here or there. It's pretty close to what I was already using. Okay, so the way an 1176 works is there's a set threshold basically, and then you just raise the volume of the input vocal until it hits the threshold the way you want it to, and then you adjust the output gain after to match or get to the level you want it to be at. Usually you try to match it close to what it was when it came in, because you want to keep all your processing kind of like at a similar volume until the end, just so you can keep track of it easier. But again, a lot of it's just how you decide to do it, you know? There's a lot of freedom in mixing. There's not really like set rules or anything you have to follow. It's kind of just like what you can do that can make it sound better, because you can always make stuff sound worse. But if it sounds good, you can usually run with it. There's definitely better practices to follow, but there's definitely no set rules that you should just like hold yourself to, you know? Mixing is just what you can do to make it sound better. Anything, you know? Any little thing here that I did in this mix, you know, I could have had this at 30 different values, this is 30 different values, this is 30 different values, and then the same thing with all my other plugins. But it's just, this is the way that I liked how it sounded. You kind of just fiddle with things until they sound good. You just have to realize what you're doing as you're fiddling. One more unique thing about the 1176 is that the attack and release knobs are inverted. So 1 is actually the slowest attack and release, and 7 is the fastest. So more to the right is faster, more to the left is slower. Normally, it'd be like 7 will be like 7 milliseconds, 1 will be like 1 millisecond. It's the opposite. The 1176 is actually quite fast. Its fast attack is like 50 nanoseconds, something very small, maybe microseconds. I forget which one, but it's very fast. So it's just a fast compressor. So we're just grabbing everything, kind of like squeezing it together. And I also find that this one has like a lot of warmth to it. So it's pretty like saturated, and that kind of definitely has the older style sound. So here's what the 1176 on.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah, I do this for you, baby. I would do anything for you, baby.
So as you can see, it's a lot less bright because the vocal was kind of squished a bit, but it's definitely better tonally balanced, and it's definitely a lot smoother. Last, I like to run an LA2A. This is the CLI 2A, the Waves version. As is this, also CLI Waves version. All these plugins, top left, Waves. So this is a very like slow style compressor. A lot of people will call it like, gluey isn't the right word, but it definitely like does a good job of like squeezing the vocals in a pleasant way and like reshaping the tone Like I said, it's kind of like the inverse of the 1176. It's a lot slower. That's why it's good to use them together. So you kind of get like a fast compression here, and then you finish up with like a slow compression. So again, this is also a set like input, or like a kind of a set threshold. You use this basically, just like move the threshold down until you get the reduction that you're looking for, or the sound that you're looking for. And then this is the output gain. So you just find the overall volume that you like it being at. I leave everything pretty much default, 100% mix, no trim. But this kind of like decides what frequencies it's compressing. Flat means it'll compress every frequency equally. 0 means it'll compress like specifically like high frequencies more, and it'll react more to high frequencies. So I usually start with it at flat and then turn it down until the low end is like kind of where I want it to be in relation to the high end. Here's what the CLI2A on.
I do this for you, baby. I do this for you, baby. Yeah, I do this for you, baby.
As you can see, it's like it kind of thickens the vocal up a lot. The nice slow compression. It beefs up the low end, so it's just a lot thicker, a lot more present in the mix. Kind of just brings it a little bit forward. After I recorded everything and was editing down the footage, I kind of decided that it was a bit long to be one video, so I'm going to make it 2. This one's going to be about 20 minutes. The other one's going to be about 20 minutes. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll probably work on getting the next part out soon. Make sure to let me know what was good about the video, what needs more work later on, what else I could have covered, what I could have gone more in depth in. I would definitely recommend that if there's something you're confused on, you don't just wait for me to make a video on it. Go find some YouTube videos yourself. There's plenty of content out there that's going to be helpful. I'm not the only person making these tutorials, making these things that can help you. There's plenty of resources on the internet, especially all over YouTube. That's mainly how I learn and grow and figure out new techniques and stuff, is I just watch videos and stuff. You don't want to take advice from everybody and everything that you see. So don't just immediately assume something's correct. But if you see something and somebody shows you an example and it sounds good and it looks like it works, you can probably trust it. And if not, you can give it a try yourself and see whether or not it's something that you'd like to kind of equip into your arsenal for use on future mixes. But yeah, leave any feedback in the comments. I don't care if you like and subscribe, but have a good day.